Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Mars, host of the SOS The Shout Out Show. Hope you're having an amazing Wednesday. It's hump day, so there's a lot of things to complain about, but Monday and Tuesday shouldn't be them. Brothers and sisters, we on that downslide, and I want to thank you in advance for joining the show. As you know, we just came back on the air on Monday. That being said, the response has been great, and for everybody that's tuned in and giving us support, thank you. We appreciate it. All right. I want to get some quick shout outs. We had some weirdness. Sadly, over in Norway, we had some people who were injured and several killed with a bow and arrow terrorist, not a terrorist, but a bow and arrow killer who was killing people. I don't know where this type of behavior is coming from. I've been to Oslo before, very peaceful, beautiful part of the world, but it goes to show you that, evil can happen anywhere and can happen any way, shape, or form. So we prayers out to the people of Oslo and their families. Brothers and sisters, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the NFL, Jon Gruden, and the continuing race issue that the NFL owners find themselves in. Recently, I didn't talk about it yesterday, but recently over the weekend, some emails were revealed about former Las Vegas football coach Jon Gruden. Now, we're not going to talk about when they were actually revealed, but they were given to the Los Angeles Raiders football team, the management and the owners. The emails, let's just be honest, they contained a lot of stuff that was explosive, a lot of stuff that was disrespectful, racist, homophobic. My problem is, and we're going to talk about it, when it was first released, a lot of the attention went to things that were said about the NFLPA executive director, DeMaurice Smith. DeMaurice Smith has been in that position for quite a long time. And in the emails, they made some very, I want to say, graphic statements about his physical appearance, saying that they call him Dumb Boris, not DeMaurice, but Dumb Boris. And you know how that resonates, not well. Saying that his lips look like Michelin tires. Mr. Gruden, former coach Gruden, tried to say no. He meant that he meant to say rubber lips, meaning that when people lie, they have rubber lips. But I'm sorry, John. You said his lips look like Michelin tires, and I have to go with your first description, if you will. But why? Because I'm not stupid. Brothers and sisters, the NFL has an issue. It's been an issue that's been pervasive for about the last 25 years. Beginning to understand that the idea of race, corporatocracy, money, and wealth still do not supersede the fact that the players in and of themselves are entities of humanity, entities of compassion and mercy. Their families that give them to the league and continue to give them to the league are people who are connected to communities and people who are connected to history. The NFL has spent an exorbitant amount of money and effort trying to make themselves into a space, and I won't question their intent, but they leaped forward with the George Floyd situation, the George Floyd revelations and the protests, and even the commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell, came out and said that the NFL was wrong not to support Black Lives Matter. This being that basically they castigated Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed, who stood out on the issue of police brutality and took a knee. And the knee became a much politicized thing. And it's easy to say that these guys were blacklisted. I think it's something even more sinister that happened to them. But I'm looking at this thing, and the only thing that I can think of is if these emails are not discovered, brothers and sisters, we're not having this conversation right now. If it's not brought to bear, it's not on consciousness. These emails brought to my mind and helped me recollect the first time I watched the Rodney King beating in 1982. It just happened to be caught on videotape. And we watched it over and over and over and over again. And even through a trial, the first trial, the police officers were found not guilty. They were retried. And of course, they were found guilty. But it's my point that you have to go to that level. And here we are, more so, brothers and sisters, we're not talking about sports. We're talking about our presence in the workplace. DeMaurice Smith was 100% right when he talked to us about, the prejudice we feel that people say things in front of us that congratulate us, but in another environment, they say things that denigrate us. we're going to be back with more of this, brothers and sisters, and we're going to take a deep dive. And I'll be totally honest with you what I'm feeling. Appreciate you. Thank you. Let's tune in. We'll be right back. This is Preacher Moss on the Shout Out Show. Let's hit it. Hey, everybody, this is your brother, Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope. All right, Satana is not available, evidently, behind she tried to end the show. That was going to be the shout out show that we ever had. I think that show was going to be Satana, about 6 minutes. All right, get back into that brand area and find out what we're doing now. Sister Satana. And before I go any further, I don't want to disparage Sister Satana. She is, of course, our consultant producer, wonderful person, and I don't want to put her business out in the street, but this is something that happens when you're not focused. This is something that happens when you're not really keeping your eyes on the prize. Let's just say this is something that happens when you're a Dallas Cowboy fan. All right, I had to get that off my chest. All right, Sister Satana, I wasn't going to put your business out there, but you shouldn't have told me you're a Cowboy fan. Oh, and this is the logo. The Dallas. Let me move this way. There we go. Oh, there we go. I'm going to stand. It's not even center, brother and sister. I'm going to stand right. No, I'm not going to be that way. We were supposed to have a commercial. I'm glad I didn't leave too far, Sister Satana. But in any event, Sister Satana, you need to explain yourself.
Apologies, y'all.
You didn't show up like the Cowboys in the playoffs last year. What's going on? You were like the Cowboys.
Them boys going to the Super Bowl. Mark my word.
Now I was talking about this whole thing with Jon Gruden and his emails. It starts out my home team, what's now known as the Washington football team. You can see them right here. This is an old background.
Yeah.
Washington Redskins. Now it's the Washington football team. It starts out as an investigation into the Washington football team having a toxic environment, meaning that Dan Snyder, the owner, was presiding over a toxic environment. It was things with cheerleaders. It was very unhealthy. So you're talking 650 emails, approximately 650 emails that the NFL has poured through as part of a larger investigation. Through these investigations, they find these emails from Gruden. Now, my problem, and probably a lot of people's questions, why are we not looking at all the emails? Why are we not looking at all the emails? Now, yeah. I can give you a scope. One of them is that the emails go back quite a few years. As you know, they're talking about these emails with Gruden went back to maybe 2011, 2012. So they've been out like 10 years. But in 10 years, a lot of things have happened. And for the NFL, a lot of things happened. They weren't particularly positive. You had a lockout that was waged with the NFL's Players Association. The players were locked out for a number of games. That was pretty, it was pretty rough, as a matter of fact, pretty cantankerous. Then, of course, you had issues of domestic violence. That was, you begin to picture it that there were scopes where domestic violence was an issue. I think even now, and I've alluded to it before, I think one of the issues that Gruden brought up in his tirades on his emails, one of them has to do with concussions. It was a shot at player safety.
But wasn't there something even wasn't the NFL that even they weren't the health benefits for black players weren't
race norming.
Race norming, exactly,
I
exactly.
believe, I
Yeah. So it's
believe,
like,
I believe that if they go into this large plethora of emails, they're going to put out a lot of stuff about race norming. And
it's a cover up. Yeah. There's a lot of, yeah.
so you can't even say it's a cover up, but I mean, because you could easily find these emails. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, basically, the breadcrumbs. But if you put it in a space in a conversation, and it looks like this is a very directed conversation, like, are we gonna do? We're gonna do A, B, C, D, and let me give full transparency, people. Um, I worked as a consultant for the NFL for about 3 years. Transition services was my specialty, my area. I worked directly with one of the higher ups, a good friend of mine, good guy, period. His name's Troy Vincent. Troy's really a player's. He's a player's manager. Though he's on the management side, he's a player's guy. He's a former player. But the problem is, as I said, and we were talking earlier before the show, I said, the NFL has become less and less a players' league. Like the NBA is a players' league. Like you have black owners of a basketball team. There are no black owners. Uh, we have a minority owner that's a Muslim, Shad Khan of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But you don't have that pathway, if you will.
Right.
In the scope of job mobility in NFL means that a lot of coaches that aren't good are recycled, and you're not bringing new people into the fold. But I think this particular situation, and we're going to get to some shout outs here in a minute. But I believe this particular situation is interesting because some of the emails directly coincide with one, the collective bargaining agreement, probably if you look at the time space, and the most recent collective bargaining agreement, if you look at the timestamps on this thing. And I'm just saying it with 650,000 emails, everybody knows that all of those emails were not from Jon Gruden.
Yeah.
So the
Exactly.
speculation, he was sent out as a sacrificial lamb. So we're gonna look at the rest of the emails. My brother JT hit me up going, why won't the NFL release all of the emails in the cause of transparency? Well, they're not gonna do it. There's no provocation to do it. It's a private company. If you look at the scope of the NFL, believe it or not, at one point in time, the NFL was a tax exempt company. And through the process of collective bargaining, particularly before the lockup, they gave up their non. Think about this, Satana. The NFL, which makes billions of dollars, gives up their tax exempt status. Now, here's the thing that people need to learn.
Yeah.
I learned it working, and I'll make this point, and let's get to some shout outs because we got people in the queue. One of the things that people don't realize is that the NFL is a body that represents the owners. It is not the. It's not a team. It's a management apparatus that basically does the bidding of all of the owners. Roger Goodell is the person that speaks to labor about player safety, player salaries, collective bargaining agreements, all those type of things. But the owners do not directly speak to them. And the last time that the owners actually spoke to the players was around social justice, which was around the time with Colin Kaepernick, Eric Reed, and of course, police brutality. This is something that I want people to understand that this is something that is extremely rare in the scope that, we may be in a space where that we may be in an opportunity where the space is going to close again. Where we may have a situation, a scenario where the owners will have to face the public, not the players. You're going to have to face the public. And I think that is something that we really need to look at. I mean, they came close, but it was the Trump years, 2006, da 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 da. You had all kind of, weird leverage that people were using to fight against social justice, things like that. But I'm saying that time is over, and you have things like the insurrection and June 6th, you have the insurrection, things like that. But there's a proliferation of information and data that reflect public mood, or at least the personal mood of owners, uh, and owners, management, and things like that. I'm intrigued personally. What do you think, Satana?
Yeah, I think that I'm intrigued to see if what else they discover or if they will go any further, because there's so much. And I think that there's going to be from, um, from, if you're saying like this is over 10 years, there's so much that has happened just in that 10 years. And so I'm so interested in seeing what's gonna come out of that, if that comes out, and it may just stop at um the owner here, um but I would really like to know what's coming out of the NFL, because then that's gonna then we'll see what the public is really gonna do. I mean, there was a little bit of outrage, with Colin Kaepernick. There was even with the
You know,
the strike. Hmm?
you know, last through the playoffs.
Right,
Great, my team is in.
right, exactly. But and that's been proven. That's been proven, right? So even the fans are kind of, you know,
Okay,
I'm not gonna say fickle, but
let's get our shout outs going.
people up.
Let's get
All
our shout
right.
outs going. Okay, we got brother Altar Rashid, my main man. Well, I like my salon off Patula, my brother, all the way from Canada. And you know what? Even Canada, the Canadian Football League, the CFL, is involved in this thing. Michael Sam, who was the first openly gay football player, signed with the St. Louis Rams. This is also in the emails. Jon Gruden saying that Roger Goodell forced Jeff Fisher, the coach at the time of the St. Louis Rams, to draft Michael Sam. He said, it shouldn't be forcing him, pardon my language, he shouldn't be forcing him to draft queers. Mm-hmm. Sam didn't have a career. He played for I think he bounced around. I think he was with the Rams. I think he was with your Cowboys. And I think he played over in the Canadian Football League for a little bit. But it's interesting that this thing it just keeps falling out. Altaf, thank you for coming on the show. For those that don't know, Altaf is a Canadian ambassador to the show. Much appreciation. I appreciate it.
And can you imagine if any of the emails contained some, offensive language towards LGBT?
It already has. It already has.
That's yeah.
Yes, he just said, he just basically called Michael Sams the first.
Yeah.
Queer, but he has a guy on the Las Vegas football team who's openly gay, Carl C. Played last weekend. We got Sister Ree. What's going on, Ree? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Peace and blessings to you and your family. As always, give Brother Derek a shout out and Brother Juwan a shout out from us. All right. Good to see Sister Ree. Who else we got here? And we got my brother, Johnny L. Thomas. What's going on? Good to see you. Wow, like my salon off my tulay, but my road buddy riding with me on the road. And I want to say, JT, hey man, I appreciate you sending me that question about the emails, because I think it's going to be a much bigger case in terms of I want to say a public relations issue, because people want to see these emails now. I'm going to jump on something here after we bring anybody else in. Who else we have? We have Sister Aika. All the way from Depok, Indonesia. Thank you, Sister Aika, for coming in and tuning in. And we hope you are well and your family's well. And we pray that, of course, that COVID situation gets better over there, and just that people are happy over in Indonesia. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Waalaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, Sister Aika.
Okay. What did you say? All is well. Thank you so much, Sister Ree. I like to hear that. All is well. Y'all make sure you keep the Sister Ree and your duas. Make sure her health is strong. I want you to be strong, Sister Ree. I want you to feel good. I want you to feel like a teenager running to that kitchen to fix your brother some food. All right. I put it in there.
Wow.
Let us know, Ree, when you're going to get back on the catering business. I'm wondering. I haven't had to print out a menu in a minute. Stay on top of it. Okay.
All right.
One of the things that was pointed out in terms of the hypocrisy of the NFL, there was a guy who wrote an article. I think it's Brian Streeter. Let's not say the name because I'm not 100% correct. But he wrote an opinion in the New York Times talking about the hypocrisy of the NFL. Because they were saying that, Jon Gruden got fired over emails. He should have. He said, but it's interesting how much, though, in terms of star treatment, that they've allowed players who've been, charged in some cases or indicted in some cases, and much more serious things, rape, domestic abuse. Somehow the NFL and the teams managed to keep these guys playing. How did you keep these guys playing? And I'm like, what? And that was one of the things that made me really just think out loud a little bit. It's like, what's the value system? You have, NFL quarterbacks has been accused of multiple rapes of women and still playing. You have some wide receivers accused of some bad things, still playing. Domestic abuse. Remember, football player, field goal kicker. He was playing while he was basically indicted, and they eventually had to take him off the team. But I think this thing with Mr. Gruden is indicative because a lot of people are going to be upset because it's come out that these emails, they're not new. They knew about these emails. Evidently, it's being said that the NFL or some group of people knew about these emails going all the way back to June. We are now in the middle of October for all intents and purposes. And the idea, and it's coming out, that the NFL was very upset that Jon Gruden was allowed to coach last Sunday in the wake of this email controversy, that he was not taken or put on administrative leave, but he was allowed to coach. And I don't know if there's a contingent to it, but the Las Vegas Raiders lost to the Chicago Bears. Now, I watch ESPN a little bit. I watch First Take. There's a player named Keyshawn Johnson. And Keyshawn Johnson has been saying for quite a number of years that Jon Gruden is not who he claims to be. He's a fake. He's a phony. But he said something that was interesting that I think we should maybe spend a couple minutes on. It's just the fact that he's indicative of a system. He's indicative of a system. And when you are in this audience over here, you speak a certain way. Or when you go to that audience, you close that door and you lock it and you let your hair down and you start speaking in tones. And Stephen A. Smith, I'm going to give him credit for this. He said it seemed like this coach, Jon Gruden, ranted about anything that wasn't white. Think about that. He ranted about anything that wasn't white. And so when you start looking at this, brothers and sisters, while the money is tremendous for a percentage of the NFL, let's be honest. Let's be really, really honest. The NFL needs a lot more bodies that are not going to get paid a premium. So people need to believe the myth that somehow that the NFL, it does change lives for some folks and some families. But for the plethora of people who sadly don't get behind or don't get a chance to take off their helmets and look at the crowd and tell them, hey, this is who I am, this is what I look like. The sad realities are you have a trail of broken bodies and broken dreams. The NFL is known as National Football League to some, but to some people, the NFL stands for not for long. This is a violent sport. Now, I'm not going to sit here and judge people's aptitude or decisions to play the sport. That's not what I'm saying. If I was a race car driver, one of the realities is going pretty fast, you could crash and you could hurt yourself or kill yourself. These are realities. We make choices, brothers and sisters, as entrepreneurs. We're human beings. We live and die by our decisions. But this is interesting because it ties into the social network of America. It ties into the social network of social entrepreneurialism, because that's what it is to be a professional athlete. You're engaged in social entrepreneurism through sports. And the idea is that when you go into a workplace, there's certain things that are going to be allowed for you, along with the opportunity, along with fairness and equity, a chance to compete. This moves it. It moves the needle in the goalpost away from the chance to compete because you have people who have pre-existing ideas that they're not willing to share with you. We may not like the Klan or the Nazi Party, but I'm going to give them credit that they stood by their core values, that if they didn't like black people or Latinos or gays or Muslims, doggone it, they said it to your face. This thing that we're dealing with right now creates a whole different level of paranoia because we don't know what people are saying about us when we leave their presence. when we're not in front of them to check them, when we're not able to talk amongst a group of people and not worry about code. This is the reality that we have right now. And the thing about this with the NFL has done a retreat. Now, like I said, to full transparency, I did work for the NFL, but I was honest. And I'll give credit to Troy Vincent. Troy made sure that I could speak my mind. I could speak my mind. But this is a situation where it's just too aligned. We just come out of this space of the NFL. I don't know if you saw the last commercial. The NFL, they have a commercial. It starts out, the NFL is gay, it's trans, it's this, it's that. I wish I had the commercial. I'd have played it. But my point is, now all of that is out the window. I'm not saying that it's back to square one, but I am saying that this square that it's on deserves a very intense spotlight. And people have to be held accountable for what they said. You see, because of Jon Gruden that puts out these emails, who's there to check Jon Gruden? You have Bruce Allen, who's supposed to be receiving them. Do you know who Bruce Allen's his brother is? George Allen, former governor. I think he's a former governor of Virginia, brothers and sisters. This thing, you see, you worry about contagion. Now, he thinks it, then this person might think it, or this person might think it. We have it in our politics right now. We literally watch it in our politics and very passe. We have people that go against Trump, the lies and the tropes that are put out by these people, these loyalists. And as a part of them saying, no, this is not the truth, they're persecuted for the truth. They are running Republicans against Republicans because this Republican didn't support or stood up and spoke against Trump. And I'm like, this is a problem. This is the problem. And I'm going to say this, and I won't be long-winded, inshallah. I'm going to say this is a problem because now I'm going to question the fact that in these emails, brothers and sisters, is a new level of privilege. Nobody saw this coming. But the person who's the messenger is Jon Gruden. It's like if you go to a bar. Like you go to a bar and you see somebody stagger out of the bar and they're really, really drunk. The first thing you're not going to say is everybody in the bar is drunk. No. What you're going to say is in that bar, somebody's serving a lot of alcohol or providing a lot of alcohol. And the proof is in the pudding of the person who staggered out of the bar. We don't have reference to where Jon Gruden really, brothers and sisters, felt he had the gravitas to say these things. You can't say them around Black people and Latinos and gay LGBTQ. You can't say that. But you shouldn't be able to say it around this group over here. Someone in an email, I would even take an email if someone said, here's an email that said, hey, John, stop with that. Hey, John, we can't talk like that. Hey, dude, cut it out. Hey, be respectful. You see what I'm saying? We in Islam, we say when you see something wrong, you either you change it with your hand, you change it with your voice, or you let it make an imprint on your heart. Nobody did any of those. And now we have this problem. And I've always had this issue, brothers and sisters, and this is maybe I'm varying, I'm deviating a little bit. I've always had this system. And this is really one of the reasons why I've always wanted to work on my own. I've always had this system that when I worked hard, there was someone above me saying things like this. There was always somebody again, we talked about this a while ago, but this is that mentality, that zero-sum mentality. That this man felt like over here I could be this way, but over here I could be this way. And somehow, some way, we're supposed to believe that this type of thinking doesn't affect him over here. We have the Fritz Pollard Alliance that called for a releasing of the emails, and they're the diversity branch of the NFL. They push for things like minority hiring and things like that. And I want to say they've been effective in some regards, but in some regards they have not been effective. Because in the end, the owners are going to do what they want to do. They own the teams, they finance the teams, they invest their money in the teams, they buy stadiums, they hold cities hostages to build new stadiums. What is Jon Gruden really? in the chain of things. Jon Gruden is he's a peon. He's a peon. He had a contract for $100 million. Daniel Snyder is worth $1 billion. $1 billion to $100 million. So why are we so fixated on the guy that he won't even get the whole $100 million? Yeah, he lost $60 million, but why are we so fixated? And I'm like, is it a bait and switch? Because somewhere, somehow, those emails proliferated. They were distributed beyond Bruce Allen. We're talking about a toxic situation at the Washington football team, formerly the Washington Redskins, where a lawsuit is going on and the situation was so egregious that the NFL launched an investigation. So to my friends and family and my NFL buddies and all that, I'm like, all I'm saying is that if we're going to be truthful, if we're really going to talk about this thing about race and diversity and fairness and equity and not pay lip service, you've got to show those emails. Doesn't matter how ugly they are and things like that. This is a point where you have to put out the truth. Doesn't matter how ugly it is. And we know, brothers and sisters, the NFL has been involved in ugly things. We've seen that before. We lived through it with Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid. We watched guys lose their careers systemically. Many of us called it that. Colin Kaepernick would not play again. I think I said that to a lot. People used to ask me, will Colin Kaepernick play? I said, absolutely not. The NFL as presently constructed at that time, in this time, brothers and sisters, I would even offer this, that Jon Gruden got off early. He got off easy because he had $40 million to lean on. And he didn't have knee problems. He didn't have injuries. He didn't have concussions. He was just a coach. All right. So we're going to wrap up there. I appreciate everybody. I want to give a shout out. There's my main man. What's going on, E? Thank you so much for joining the show. We appreciate you, my brother. You got to drop through more often. And we got Mama song, Sister Mary Mars. What Mom say? Money rules today. So a few more non-owners will be scheduled. Then slow, quiet. Okay. I appreciate that, Mom. Yeah. And my mom understands that. And she knows. Later on, my mom used to work for Health and Human Services. And when you work for a public institution, that things happen. Things happen differently. But when you have a private entity, because the NFL, like I said, is an office that caters to the owners. And the owners, they have their own universe, brothers and sisters. It's just like you think about this, and it could be, there's been some owners that have been involved in some pretty egregious stuff, and it just went away. I won't throw out any names, but I'm just saying. So look, that's our show for today. If you get a chance, follow up, read a little bit about Jon Gruden and the NFL and America's race reality. Because I think the brother with the New York Times article had a good point about NFL hypocrisy. How are we letting all these other people do these egregious things? And the fact is, they help teams generate money. The players help teams generate money. Sorry, Jon Gruden, you don't help teams generate money. Mediocre coach in the pros. You got a Super Bowl, but you took over a team from a guy who gave you a Super Bowl contending team. And then you out of coaching for a long time. Somehow you get, and that's another thing. He comes back after 10 years and gets a job coaching. He hadn't coached anywhere, college. That after 10 years shows up, and he gets a job for a $100 million contract. Maybe that's another topic. But listen, you guys have been great. Let's go ahead and get to our sponsors. We want to make sure we give a shout out to our sponsor, BeFinancialIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinancialIndependent.com. Call 1-888-496-6845. Again, that's 1-888-496-6845. All right, make sure you check it out. If you have money, well, it doesn't do you any good to leave it in your piggy bank. The money that's the bank gives you is the least amount of money you can. Invest in yourself, invest in your knowledge about how you can make your money work for you. So I would encourage that you go to BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Next up, we're going to shout out to Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Again, that's Bayan Islamic Graduate School. They are accepting applications for the 2022 spring semester. Brothers and sisters, this is a great opportunity. And I don't want to say for Muslims, I'm going to say for everybody to kind of understand world religion in terms of application and historical narrative. You have people, brothers and sisters, who study religions that they're not a part of. You have people that look at religious tradition they're not part of, and it's not just religious tradition; it's philosophy, it's history, and all of these things. So, Bayan Islamic Graduate School is a place you want to be. They have one of the premier programs for chaplaincy, specifically for Muslim chaplaincy. I'm just saying we got a lot of brothers locked up, but the Muslim chaplaincy is something that's growing and will continue to grow, as well as pastoral services. So make sure you check them out. So listen, that's my show. I will see you guys tomorrow, inshallah. Preacher Ma, shout out show on behalf of my sister and God help her, Dallas fan, Satana Whitfield. We'll be back tomorrow. Take care. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, team, we've come to the end of yet another show. And I have to say, I had a good time, and I hope that you had a good time as well. Listen, at this part of the show, we have no more show. I could literally sing a song saying we have no more show. However, to spare all of us that embarrassment and chaos, I'm just going to say, please join us tomorrow here on the Shout Out Show, Monday through Thursdays, and every first Saturday, we do our Saturday Spotlight. Here we are again, 5 to 5:30 on the Central Time. And of course, we're going to do our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock p.m. And of course, that would be 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So, time for you to go because it's time for me to go. I think I will do that song. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for coming to the show. That's all the lyrics I wrote. But you get the idea. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum. Shout out.